Wow, it was a great journey through this course. We have finally reached our last section of this course. I'm pretty sure that you must have understood a lot of concepts. If you have any doubts, please feel free to ask on the question and answer forum. So, moving on to our last section of this wonderful course, we'll see what we are going to learn in this particular module. So, we'll start with intrusion detection system. Then we'll move on to firewalls, the architecture of firewalls, what is a firewall and how it is implemented. And then we'll move on to the most common software that everyone has, the antivirus software. Yes. So we'll see how antivirus software works, because the working of antivirus software is very crucial one to understand. You have to pay very detailed attention of how it works, and then we'll finally end our this module. So please feel free to ask your questions, and don't forget to attempt those quiz, as they will really help you in gaining those tricky points. So let us start a brand new section: firewalls. Now, in this section of firewalls, we will start with intrusion detection system, that is IDS. You might have heard of the term IDS and IPS interchangeably. There is only a slight difference between IDS and IPS. Let us see what is intrusion detection system. An intrusion detection system is basically a system that monitors network traffic for suspicious activity and issues alerts when such activity is discovered. Now, issuing alert is more important, that is detection and notifying. Now, IDS is a software application that scans a network or a system for harmful activity or policy breaching. Any malicious venture or violation is normally reported either to an administrator or collected centrally using a security information and event management, that is SIEM system. A SIEM system integrates outputs from multiple sources and uses alarm filtering techniques to differentiate malicious activity from false alarms. Now, IDS is only used to detect the threats, whereas IPS, that is intrusion prevention system, can also prevent and detect the threats. Although intrusion detection systems monitor networks for potentially malicious activity, they are also disposed to false alarms. Hence, organizations need to fine-tune their IDS products when they first install them. It means properly setting up the intrusion detection system to recognize what traffic on the network looks like as compared to malicious activity. Intrusion prevention system also monitors network packets inbound the system to check the malicious activities involved in it and at once send the warning notification. Now we will see how intrusion detection system actually works. Now let us see how intrusion detection system works. You can see in front of you the intrusion detection system is placed before the firewall and in between the internet and the firewall. Now there are two types of IDS. One is external IDS, which is placed in between the internet and the firewall, and another IDS is placed in the inside of the network, which is also known as internal IDS. So whenever a malicious packet or information data packets are passed from the internet to the internal network, those packets first have to go through the IDS, that is intrusion detection system. Now if the packets found, or if there are some packets which are malicious, now IDS detects those packets and probably drops them. After that, those packets go through the firewall, and which acts as an extra layer of protection for the internal network. Now the monitor servers help in assessing the packets before forwarding it to the workstations or computers or servers present inside the system. Now, how does IDS detects an intrusion? Like, how does it identify whether this packet is bad packet or I should allow this packet to go? Now, there are detection methods of IDS. The first is signature based recognition. Now, signature based IDS detects the attacks on the basis of the specific patterns such as number of bytes or number of ones and number of zeros in the network traffic. It also detects on the basis of the already known malicious instruction sequence that is used by the malware. The detected patterns in the IDS are known as signatures. Signature-based IDS can easily detect the attacks whose pattern already exists in the system, but it is quite difficult to detect the new malware attacks as their pattern is not known. Now let us see the next type of detection method, which is anomaly detection. Anomaly-based IDS was introduced to detect the unknown malware attacks as new malware are developed rapidly. In anomaly-based intrusion detection system, there is a use of machine learning to create a trustful activity model, and anything coming is compared with that model, and then it is declared whether it is malicious, suspicious or not. Machine learning based method has a better generalized property in comparison to signature based IDS, as these models can be trained according to the applications and hardware configurations. And the last one is protocol anomaly detection. In this way, or in this method, in this detection method, the IDS detects the packets based on the protocols, which protocol the packet is using, through which protocol whether the packet is getting transferred. If the packet is getting transferred using HTTP, it may use more filters and such. Now we will see different types of intrusion detection systems. The first one is network-based intrusion detection system, which is also known as NIDS. NIDS is a very common term. You must have heard people saying have you installed NIDS on your PC or not. So what is exactly NIDS? NIDS are set up at a planned point within the network to examine traffic from all devices on the network. It performs an observation of passing traffic on the entire subnet and matches the traffic that is passed on the subnet to the collection of known attacks. Once attack is identified or abnormal behavior is observed, the alert can be sent to the administrator. An example of an NIDS is installing it on the subnet where firewalls are located in order to see if someone is trying to crack the firewall. The next is host intrusion detection system, that is HIDS. Now HIDS run on independent hosts or devices on the network. A HIDS monitors the incoming and outgoing packets from the device only and will alert the administrator if suspicious or malicious activity is detected. It takes a snapshot of existing system files and compares it with the previous snapshot. If the analytical system files were edited or deleted, an alert is sent to the administrator to investigate further. An example of HIDS usage can be seen on mission critical machines which are not expected to change their layout. The next is log file monitoring or application protocol based intrusion detection system. Application protocol based intrusion detection system is a system or an agent that generally resides within a group of servers. It identifies the intrusions by monitoring and interpreting the communication on the application specific protocols. For example, this would monitor the SQL protocol explicit to the middleware as it transacts with the database in the web server. And the common is a hybrid intrusion detection system, which is basically a combination of two or more approaches that we discussed just now. Hybrid intrusion detection system is more effective in comparison to the other intrusion detection systems, and one of the greatest example of HIDS is hybrid HIDS. You can search and you will get an idea about that. Now let us see the different types of IDS alerts. You can see there are 4 types of IDS alerts on your screen, and each alert consists of 2 words. The first word, that is, it is true or false, which stands for attack, and the second word stands for alert. So what is true positive? Now true means an IDS raises an alarm when a legitimate attack occurs, which means attack occurred, yes true, alert generated, yes positive. So true positive is attack has happened and IDS generated an alarm. False positive, an IDS raises an alarm when no attack has taken place, which means there was no attack or no malicious file, still IDS give an alert. So false stands for attack, positive stands for alert. False negative, an IDS does not raise an alarm when a legitimate attack has taken place, which means there was attack but there was no alert. And true negative is an IDS does not raise an alarm when an attack has not taken place. That is true positive. Now these last 2 terms can be confusing, because when it is false negative, which means there was neither attack, and when it is false negative, it in this case attack has happened but there wasn't an IDS alert. So for the last 2 terms you have to be more careful about that. Now these terms might differ from other books. In other books they have just used true for alert and positive for attack. So you just want to get the basic idea of IDS alerts, and you have to stick to only one notion. In the next lecture we will have an introduction to firewalls. We will see how firewalls work and basically what is a firewall. Let us start with firewalls. So what is a firewall? A firewall is a network security device. It is either hardware or software based, which monitors all incoming and outgoing traffic, and based on a defined set of security rules, it accepts, rejects, or drops that specific packet. A firewall establishes a barrier between secured internal networks and outside untrusted network such as internet. So it is basically placed between 2 different networks. Before firewalls, network security was performed by access control list, that is ACLs, residing on the routers. ACLs are rules that determine whether network access should be granted or denied to a specific IP address. So basically the function of a firewall or ACL is to act as a checkpoint or a toll or a security guard who basically checks and examines the incoming packets and decides whether to allow entry or not. But ACLs cannot determine the nature of the packet it is blocking. Also, ACL alone does not have the capacity to keep threats out of the network, hence the firewall was introduced. Connectivity to the internet is no longer optional for organizations. However, accessing the internet provides benefits to the organization. It also enables the outside world to interact with the internal network of the organization. This creates a threat to the organization. Now, in order to secure the internal network from unauthorized traffic, we need a firewall. So, these are the functions of a firewall. Accept a packet, reject a packet, or just drop the packet. You can see in the video, if it is a green packet, it is allowing the firewall, and a firewall eventually allows the packet to go inside the network. But if it is a malicious packet, it just rejects and drops the packet. Now, as we have discussed, there are 2 different types of firewalls. First one is a hardware firewall and the second one is a software firewall. Hardware firewalls are basically installed on the routers connecting the network and the internet, and software firewalls are basically programs installed on computers or laptops. The common examples of software firewalls are Quick Heal, Avast, and McAfee. So, how does before we see the firewall technologies, we should know how firewall works. So let us go back to the slide where we have seen the small video. Yes, the firewall matched the network traffic against a set of rules defined in its table. You can see the table there. Now, once the rule is matched, associate action is applied to the network traffic. For example, rules are defined as any employee for HR department cannot access the data from code server, and at the same time another rule is defined like system administrator can access the data from both HR and technical department. Rules can be defined on the firewall based on the necessary and security policies of the organization. From the perspective of a server, network traffic can be either outgoing or incoming. Firewall maintains a distinct set of rules for both the cases. Mostly, the outgoing traffic originated from the server itself is allowed to pass. Still, setting a rule on outgoing traffic is always a good practice. Now, it is very difficult to explicitly cover every possible rule on the firewall, and for this reason, the firewall must always have a default policy. Now, default policy consists of the following actions: accept, reject, or drop. Suppose no rule is defined about SSH connection to the server on the firewall, it will follow the default policy. If default policy on the firewall is set to accept, then any computer outside of your office can still establish an SSH connection to the server. Therefore, setting up a default policy as a drop or reject is always a good practice. Now, the firewall technologies. First is packet filtering firewall. Packet filtering firewall is used to control network access by monitoring outgoing and incoming packet and allowing them to pass or stop based on the source and destination IP addresses, protocols, and ports. It analyzes traffic at the network layer. Now, packet filter walls or firewalls treat each packet in isolation. They have no stability to tell whether a packet is a part of an existing system or a traffic. Only it can allow or deny the packets based on unique packet headers. Packet filtering firewall maintains a filtering table which decides whether the packet will be forwarded or discarded. Now, the second is circuit level gateway firewall. Circuit level gateways work at the session layer of the OSI model. It is the advanced version of application gateway. It acts as a virtual connection between the remote host and the internal users by creating a new connection between itself and remote host. It also changes the source IP address in the packet and puts its own IP address at the place of the source IP. This way, the IP addresses of the internal users are hidden and secured from the outside world. Next is application level firewall or application gateways. Now it is also known as a proxy server. It works in basically 3 steps. So the first step is user contacts the application gateway using a TCP application such as HTTP. Step 2, the application gateway asks about the remote host with which the user wants to establish a connection. It also asks for the user ID and a password that is required to access the service of the application gateway. And step 3, after verifying the authenticity of the user, the application gateway accesses the remote host on behalf of the user to deliver the packets. And as the name suggests, application level gateway or application layer firewall works at the application layer. And the last is stateful inspection firewall. It is also known as dynamic packet filters, and it keeps track of the state of the active connections and uses a combination of the previous firewalls. That is, it can be a combination of circuit gateway or an application gateway. So these are the firewall technologies. These are not the firewall types, but these are the firewall technologies. Now, what are the limitations of firewalls? Now, before doing that, if you want to listen or if you want to know more about different types of firewalls, there are two types of firewalls: the hardware firewall and software firewalls. Those are the types of firewalls, and the technologies we have seen a couple of minutes ago. Now, what are the limitations of firewalls? A firewall does not prevent the network from new viruses, backdoor, and insider attacks. A firewall cannot do anything if the network design and configuration is faulty. A firewall is not an alternative to antivirus or anti-malware. A firewall cannot prevent social engineering threats. Also, a firewall does not prevent password misuse. A firewall does not block attacks from a higher level of protocol stack. Firewall does not protect against attacks from dial-in connections and attacks originating from common ports and applications. And again, firewall is unable to understand tunneled traffic. In the next lecture, we will see what is meant by DMZ or demilitarized zone. In this lecture, we are going to talk about IDS evasion techniques, how hackers can evade the intrusion detection system and gain access to the system. The first method is insertion attack. Insertion is the process in which the attacker confuses the intrusion detection system by forcing it to read invalid packets. An IDS blindly believes and accepts a packet that an end system rejects, and an attacker exploits this condition and inserts data into the IDS. This attack occurs when the network intrusion detection system is less strict in processing packets than the internal network. The attacker obscures extra traffic and IDS concludes the traffic is harmless. Hence, IDS gets more packets than the destination. In the figure, you can see that the attacker's data stream is TXT CAAK. But when it goes to the network monitor sees it as ATX TACK, right? And at the end system, after dropping the X packets, the result at the end system is attack. In this way, insertion attacks are carried out. The next attack is a DOS attack, that is denial of service or intrusion detection system. Many IDS use a centralized server for logging alerts. If an attacker knows the IP address of the centralized server, they can perform the DOS or other hacks to slow down or crash the server. As a result, attackers' intrusion attempts will not be logged. Using this evasion technique, an attacker can cause the device to lock up. It can also cause personnel to be unable to investigate all the alarms and delete the logs. It causes more alarms that can be handled by management systems. It will fill up the disk space, causing attacks to not be logged, and it consumes the device processing power and allows attacks to sneak by. There are other attacks as well. I will just give a brief introduction to such attacks. The next attack is obfuscating. Obfuscating is an IDS evasion technique used by attackers to encode the attack payload in such a way that the destination host can only decode the packet, but IDS cannot decode the packet. Attackers manipulate the path referenced in the signature to fool the host intrusion detection system. Attackers can encode attack patterns in Unicode to bypass the IDS filters but be understood by an IIS web server. Attacks on encrypted protocols such as HTTPS are often obfuscated if the attack is encrypted. Next is false positive generation. Attackers with the knowledge of the target IDS craft malicious packets just to generate alerts. These packets are sent to the IDS to generate large number of false positive alerts. Attackers then use these false positive alerts to hide the real attack traffic. The next is session splicing. Session splicing is a technique used to bypass the IDS where an attacker splits the attack traffic into many packets such that no single packet triggers the IDS. Basically, it is a kind of fragmentation attack. Now, this attack is effective against IDS that do not reconstruct the packets before checking them against intrusion signatures. If attackers are aware of delay in packet reassembly, they can add delays between the packet transmissions to bypass the reassembly. Now, many IDS stops reassembly, and if they do not receive packets within a certain time, they will stop working if the target host keeps session active for a time longer than the IDS. Any attack attempt after a successful splicing attack will not be logged by the IDS. The next is Unicode evasion. Unicode is a character coding system to support the worldwide interchange, processing, and display of written texts. In the Unicode space, all the code points are treated differently, but it is possible that there could be multiple representations of a single character. Now, because of this complexity, some IDS systems handle Unicode improperly as Unicode allows multiple interpretations of the same characters. Taking this as an advantage, attackers can convert attack strings to Unicode characters to avoid pattern and signature matching at the IDS. Fragmentation attack. Fragmentation can be used as an attack vector when fragmentation timeouts vary between IDS and host. If fragment reassembly timeout is 10 seconds at the IDS and 20 seconds at the target system, attackers will send the second fragment exactly after 15 seconds after sending the first fragment. Now, in this scenario, the IDS will drop the fragment as the second fragment is received after its reassembly, but the target system will reassemble the fragments. Attacker will keep sending the fragments with 15-second delays until the attack payload is reassembled at the target system. And the last one is time to live attacks, that is TTL attack. Now, these attacks require the attacker to have a prior knowledge of the topology of the victim's network. This information can be obtained using tools such as traceroute, then ZenMap, which gives information on the number of routers between the attacker and the victim. We have seen the fisheye topology in the scanning part of this course. Attacker breaks malicious traffic into 3 fragments. Attacker sends the fragment 1 with high TTL, false fragment 2 with low TTL. Now, IDS receives both the fragments. Victim receives first fragment only since second was a false fragment. Again, attacker sends the fragment 3 with high TTL. Now, IDS resembles 3 fragments into meaningless packet and then drops. But victim receives the real fragment 2 and suffers the attack while no longer entry of logs is executed. So these were the techniques used to evade the intrusion detection system. In the next lecture, we will see some techniques which are used to evade the firewall. Let us continue with firewalls. In this lecture, We'll see what is meant by a demilitarized zone, that is DMZ. In computer security, a DMZ, that is a demilitarized zone, is a network which functions as a subnetwork containing an organization's exposed outward facing services. It acts as the exposed point to an untrusted networks, commonly the internet. The goal of a DMZ is to add an extra layer of security to an organization's local area network. A protected and monitored network node that faces outside the internal network can access what is exposed in the DMZ, while the rest of the organization's network is safe behind a firewall. When implemented properly, a DMZ network gives organizations extra protection in detecting and mitigating security breaches before they reach the internal network where valuable assets are stored. Now, what is the purpose of DMZ? The DMZ network exists to protect the hosts most vulnerable to attack. These hosts usually involve services that extend to users outside of the local area network, and the most common examples being email web servers and DNS servers. Because of the increased potential for attacks, they are placed into the monitored subnetwork to help protect the rest of the network if they become compromised. Hosts in the DMZ have tightly controlled access permissions to other services within the internal network because the data passed to the DMZ is not as secure. So as you can see on the screen, this is the internet, and the blue region this is the DMZ, that is the demilitarized zone. Now in the demilitarized zone, which are the services that are available? That is mail, DNS, FTP and web. Now these services are available in the demilitarized zone, which means if a client wants to connect to the private network or use any of the services that are in the DMZ, the first thing is to pass the packet to the screening router, and through the screening router they can access these services. But if someone tries to intercept with the private network here, now that becomes an issue because that one is protected. Now since private network is not available to the public, it is placed after the DMZ. So in between the internet and the private network lies the demilitarized zone, that is DMZ. Now typically an additional firewall will be responsible for protecting the DMZ and from exposure to everything on the external network. All services accessible to users on communicating from an external network can and should be placed in the demilitarized zone if a demilitarized zone is used in an organization. The most common services are web servers. So you can see Bayesian host web servers, then is mail servers, that is mail servers, FTP servers, and then DNS servers. Now web servers are responsible for maintaining communication with an internal database, and they may need to be placed in the DMZ because some web services are also required by the clients which are outside the private network, that is the internet. So these are the common services which are provided inside the perimeter of DMZ. Now why DMZ is so much important, why the term DMZ is hyped, and why do security experts should have a brief knowledge of firewalls, IDS, antivirus and demilitarized zones. Now on many home networks, internet-enabled devices are built around a local area network which accesses the internet from a broadband router. However, the router serves as both a connection point and a firewall, thus automating traffic filtering to ensure only safe messages enter the local area network. So, on a home network, a DMZ can be built by adding a dedicated firewall between the local area network and the router. While more expensive, this structure can help to protect internal devices from sophisticated attacks, better protects the inside devices from possible attacks by the outsiders. DMZs are an essential part of network security for both individual users and large companies. They provide an extra layer of security to the computer network by restricting remote access to internal servers and information, which can be damaging if breached. In the next lecture, we will see how to evade the intrusion detection system, that is IDS evasion techniques. Let us see the firewall evasion techniques. Now, before seeing the firewall evasion techniques, I would like to discuss a new topic of honeypots. So, what are honeypot? Now, the honeypot definition comes from the world of espionage, where spies used a romantic relationship as a way to steal secrets, which are described as a honey trap or honeypot. Often, an enemy spy is compromised by a honey trap and then blackmailed to hand over everything he or she owns. In computer security terms, a cyber honeypot works in a similar way, baiting a trap for hackers. It's a sacrificial computer system that's intended to attract cyber attacks, basically like a decoy. It mimics a target for hackers and uses their intrusion attempts to gain information about the cyber criminals and the way they are operating or to distract them from other targets. How honeypots work? The honeypot looks like a real computer system with applications and data fooling cyber criminals into thinking that it is a legitimate target. For example, a honeypot could mimic a company's customer billing system, that is a frequent target of attacks for criminals who want to find credit card numbers. Now, once the hackers are in, they can be tracked and their behavior assessed for clues on how to make the real network more secure. Honeypots are made attractive to attackers by building deliberate security vulnerabilities. For instances, a honeypot might have ports that respond to a port scan or a weak password. Now, vulnerable ports might be left open to entice attackers into a honeypot environment rather than the more secure live network. So basically, honeypots are used to mislead attackers, and if attackers get infected in honeypots, the original system can track the attackers and get their technology. So basically, it is kind of a trap. So do not just randomly scan any website, you might get trapped inside a honeypot. Now let us see the different types of firewall evasion techniques. The first being the IP address spoofing. IP address spoofing is a hijacking technique in which an attacker masquerades as a trusted host to conceal his identity, spoof a website, hijack browsers, or gain unauthorized access to a network. Attackers modify the addressing information in the IP packet header and the source address bits field in order to bypass the firewall. Now here you can see the attacker's real IP is 1.1.1 and the source or the spoofed ID is 3.3.3. An attacker is indented to send a packet to victim whose IP is 2.2.2. Now attacker will not send IP packet using his real IP. So what he has done, he has spoofed the IP address of the internet router. So when attacker sends a packet to victim feels that the packet has been sent by the source 3.3.3 and therefore it will trust it. But in the real case, the packet is being sent by the attacker. So the process is like this. Okay. So this is known as spoofing of IP address. The next firewall evasion technique is source routing. Now, source routing allows the sender of a packet to partially or completely specify the route the packet takes through the network. As the packet travels through the nodes in the network, each router examines the destination IP address and chooses the next hop to direct the packet to the destination. In source routing, the sender makes some or all of these destinations on the router. So here you can see that attacker wants to send the packet to the server, but this way is blocked. So what? Attacker will send the packet via this way, and then the packet will get reached to the server. The next firewall evasion technique that we are going to discuss is fragmentation. Now, attackers create tiny fragments of outgoing packets, forcing some of the TCP packet's header information into the next fragment. The IDS filter rules that specify patterns will not match with the fragmented packets due to broken header information. We have seen such kind of fragmentation attack in the IDS evasion as well. The attack methodology is same because the original datagram is broken down into simpler pieces so that the IDS or the firewall won't understand that all the packets are from one single malicious source. And another type of or different types of firewall evasion techniques include fragmentation, ICMP tunneling, which means it allows a tunneling a backdoor shell in the data portion of ICMP echo packets. Then ACK tunneling, in which it allows tunneling a backdoor with TCP packets with the ACK bit set. HTTP tunneling is the process or the technology which allows attackers to perform various internet tasks despite the restrictions imposed by firewalls. And finally, SSH tunneling, in which attackers use OpenSSH to encrypt and tunnel all the traffic from a local machine to a remote machine to avoid detection by perimeter security controls. Now, these methods you do not need to study in depth, but if you are interested, we have attached a few books along with this course. Please go through these books if you are interested to learn more about firewall evasion techniques and again firewalls in general. Now let us see how to prevent or defend against firewall evasions. Configuration of the firewall should be done in such a way that the IP address of an intruder should be filtered out. Set the firewall rule set to deny all the traffic and enable only the services required. If possible, create a unique user ID to run the firewall services. Rather than running the services using the administrator or root IDs, it is a good practice to create an individual user ID. Configure a remote system log server and apply strict measures to protect it from malicious users. Monitor firewall logs at regular intervals and investigate all suspicious log entries found. Now by default, disable all the FTP connections to or from the network. Now catalog and review all the inbound and outbound traffic allowed through the firewall. Take regular backups of the firewall rule set and configuration files, and schedule regular firewall security audits. Also control physical access to the firewall and specify the source and destination IP addresses as well as the ports. Now in this way, you can prevent firewall evasion so that the attacker cannot breach the system. In the next lecture, we will see how to carry out a firewall or IDS penetration testing.
In this video, I'm going to cover 4 types of firewalls. The first one is the packet filtering firewall. The packet filtering firewall is the most basic type of firewall. In the packet filtering firewall, each incoming packet is examined and only those packets that match the criteria you set are allowed to pass through. Many operating systems such as Windows and many Linux distributions include basic packet filtering software with the operating systems. Packet filtering firewalls are also referred to as screening firewalls. They can filter packets based on packet size, protocol used, source IP address, and many other parameters. Some routers offer this type of firewall protection in addition to the normal routing functions. Packet filtering firewalls work by examining a packet's source address, source port, destination port, and the protocol type. Based on these factors and the rules that a firewall has been configured with, they either allow or deny passage to the packet. Well, these firewalls are very easy to configure and also are inexpensive. There are few disadvantages of the packet filtering firewalls. One disadvantage is that they do not actually examine the packet or compare it to the previous packets. Therefore, they are quite susceptible to either ping flood or SYN flood. They also do not offer any user authentication. Because this type of firewall looks only at the packet header for the information, it has no information about the packet contents. It also does not track packets, so it has no information about the preceding packets. Therefore, if thousands of packets came from the same IP address in a short period of time, a host would not notice that this pattern is unusual. Such a pattern often indicates that the IP address is in question and is attempting to perform a DOS attack on the network. Next is the circuit level gateway firewall. Circuit level gateway firewalls are similar to application gateways, but are more secure and generally implemented on the high-end equipment. These type of firewalls also employ user authentication, but they do so in the earlier process. With an application gateway, first the client application is checked to see if the access should be granted, and then the user is authenticated. With circuit level gateways, authenticating the user is the first step. The user's login ID and the password are checked, and the user is granted access before the connection to the router is established. This means that each individual, either by username or IP address, must be verified before any further communication can take place. Once this verification takes place and the connection between the source and destination is established, the firewall simply passes bytes between the systems. A virtual circuit exists between the internal client and the proxy server. Internal requests go through this circuit to the proxy server, and the proxy server delivers those requests to the internet after changing the IP addresses. External users only see the IP address of the proxy server. Responses are then received by the proxy server and sent back through the circuit to the client. It is this virtual circuit that makes the circuit level gateway secure. The private secure connection between the client application and the firewall is a more secure solution than some other options, such as simple packet filtering firewall and the application gateway. Where traffic is allowed through external systems, never see the internal systems. Next is the application level gateway. An application level gateway is a program that runs on a firewall. This type of firewall derives its name from the fact that it works by negotiating with various types of applications to allow their traffic to pass through the firewall. In networking terminology, negotiation is a term used to refer to the process of authentication and verification. In other words, rather than looking at the protocol and port the packet is using, an application gateway will examine the client application and server-side application to which it is trying to connect. It will then determine if that particular client application's traffic is permitted through the firewall. This is significantly different from packet filtering firewall, which examines that the packets and has no knowledge of what sort of application is sent through them. Application gateways enable the administrator to allow access to only to a certain specific type of applications, such as web browsers or FTP clients. When a client program, such as a web browser, establishes a connection to a destination service, such a web server, it connects to an application gateway or proxy. The client then negotiates with the proxy server in order to gain access to the destination service. In effect, proxy establishes the connection with the destination behind the firewall and acts on the behalf of the client, hiding and protecting individual computers on the network behind the firewall. This process actually creates two connections. There is one connection between the client and the proxy server, and another connection between the proxy server and the destination. Once a connection is established, the application gateway makes all decisions about which packets to forward. Since all communication is conducted through the proxy server, computers behind the firewall are protected. The last one is the stateful packet inspection. The stateful inspection firewall is an improvement on the basic packet filtering. This type of firewall will examine each packet, denying or permitting access based on not only on the examination of the current packet, but also on the data derived from previous packets in the conversation. This means that firewall is aware of the context in which a specific packet was sent. This makes these firewalls far less susceptible to ping floods and the SYN floods, as well as being less susceptible to spoofing. These firewalls are less susceptible to these attacks because of following reasons. They can tell whether the packet is a part of abnormally large stream of packets from a particular IP address, thus indicating a possible DOS attack in progress. They can tell whether the packet has a source IP address that appears to come from inside the firewall, thus indicating IP spoofing is in progress. They can also look at the actual contents of the packet, allowing for some very advanced filtering capabilities. Most quality firewalls today use the stateful inspection method. When possible, this is a recommended type of firewall for most of the systems. In fact, most home routers have the option of using stateful inspection firewall. The name stateful packet inspection derives from the fact that in addition to examining the packet, the firewall is examining the packet's state in relationship to the entire IP conversation. This means the firewall can enter, that is, refer to those preceding packets as well as those packets contains source and destination. As you might suspect, the stateful inspection firewalls are becoming quite common. Limitations of firewall. As shown on the screen, a firewall cannot prevent users or attackers with modems from dialing into or out of the internet network, thus bypassing the firewall and its protection completely. Firewalls cannot enforce your password policy or prevent misuse of passwords. Your password policy is crucial in this area because it outlines acceptable conducts and sets ramifications of non-compliance. Firewalls are ineffective against non-technical security risks such as social engineering. Firewalls cannot stop internal users from accessing websites with malicious code, making user education critical. Also, firewalls cannot protect you from poor decisions. Firewalls cannot protect you when your security policy is too weak.
Let us begin with another new wonderful section of antivirus. So what is antivirus, definition, its history, and everything we are going to discuss. So basically antivirus software or anti-virus software is also known as anti-malware, is a computer program which is used to prevent, detect and remove malware. It was originally developed to detect and remove computer viruses, hence it was named as antiviruses. But modern antivirus softwares can protect users from various sources like phishing attacks, spam emails, trojans, keyloggers, backdoors, etc. So why the question arises, why do you need antivirus software? So see, these tools are critical for users to have installed and up to date because a computer without antivirus software protection will be infected with within minutes of connecting to the internet. See, when you connect to the web is a source of everything. It's a source of good ideas, bad viruses, everything. It also contains huge amount of waste. The bombardment is constant, which means antivirus companies have to update their detection tools regularly to deal with more than 60,000 new pieces of malware created daily. So this is a great number. See, 60,000 malwares are created daily on an average, which is a huge number. Today's malware changes appearances quickly to avoid detection by older definition based antivirus software. Viruses can be programmed to cause damage to your device, prevent a user from accessing data, or to take control of your computer. So, what does antivirus software do is the most frequently asked question. Several different companies build antivirus software, and what each offer can vary but performs some essential functions. It scans specific files or directories for any malware or known malicious patterns. It allows you to schedule your scans to automatically run for you. Then it allows you to initiate a scan of a particular file or your entire computer or CD drives or hard drives or external devices. Then it can detect and remove malicious codes, or sometimes you will be notified that you're accessing a wrong website or spam website. It will also show you the health of your computer. But always be sure that you have the best up-to-date security software installed to protect your computers, laptops, tablets and smartphones, because after all your data is important. The next we are going to see in the next lecture probably, that we'll see various antivirus detection techniques and we'll discuss them in detail. In this lesson, we will see how an antivirus software detects whether the file has a virus present in it. So in short, we are going to discuss about the detection techniques. The first one is the signature based detection. It is the most common method to identify viruses and other malwares. Antivirus software compares the contents of a file to a dictionary of virus signatures. Because viruses can embed themselves in existing files, the entire file is searched, not just as a whole but also in pieces. So basically, signature detection technique is just comparing the contents of file, and if you find that virus in the dictionary as well as in the file, then you declare it as a virus is found. Malicious activity detection which is also known as another way to identify malware. In this approach, antivirus software monitors the system for suspicious behavior program. And the last one is the heuristic based detection. Like malicious activity detection, heuristics can be used to identify unknown viruses. So let us explore each of these methods in detail. So signature based detection is the most common method that antivirus software uses to identify malware. This method is somewhat limited by the fact that it can only identify a limited amount of emerging threats, that is, generic or extremely broad signatures. When antivirus software scans a file for viruses, it checks the contents of a file against a dictionary of virus signatures. A virus signature is the viral code. Finding a virus signature in a file is the same as saying you found the virus itself. If a virus signature is found in a file, the antivirus software can take action to remove the virus. Antivirus software will usually perform one or more of the following actions: quarantining, repairing, or deleting. Quarantining a file will make it inaccessible and is usually the first action antivirus software will take if a malicious file is found. Encrypting the file is a good quarantine technique because it renders the file useless. Sometimes a user wants to save the content of an infected file because viruses can sometimes embed themselves in the files called code injection, and the file may be essential to normal operation. To do this, antivirus software will attempt to repair the file. To do this, the software will try to remove the viral code from the file. Unfortunately, some viruses might damage the file upon injection. The third action antivirus software can take against a virus is straight away deleting the file. If a file repair operation fails, usually the best thing to do is just to delete the file. Deleting the file is necessary if the entire file is infected, and you may also lose the contents of the file. Because new viruses are being created each day, the signature-based detection approach requires frequent updates of the virus signature dictionary. To assist the antivirus software companies, the software may allow user to upload new viruses or variants to the company. Signature-based antivirus software typically examines files when the computer's operating system creates, opens, closes, or emails them. In this way, it can detect a known virus immediately upon receipt. System administrators can schedule antivirus software to scan all the files on the computer hard disk at a set time and date. Although the signature-based detection approach can effectively contain virus outbreaks in the right circumstances, virus authors have tried to stay a deep ahead of such software by writing oligomorphic, polygomorphic, and other recently metamorphic viruses, which encrypts parts of themselves or otherwise modify themselves as a method of disguise so as not to match the virus signatures in the dictionary. So the main disadvantage of signature based detection is that you constantly need to update your database. And since the virus makers are pretty intelligent, they find some or the other way to escalate this signature based detection. So the next type of detection technique is suspicious behavior of monitoring. The suspicious behavior approach, by contrast, does not attempt to identify known viruses, but instead monitors the behavior of all the programs. If one program tries to write data to an executable program, for example, if the antivirus software can flag this suspicious behavior, then it can alert the user and ask the user what actions are needed to be taken. Unlike the signature based approach, the suspicious behavior approach therefore provides protection against brand new viruses that do not yet exist in any virus dictionaries. However, it can also sound a large number of false positives, and user may become desensitized to the warnings. If a user clicks accept on every such warning, then the antivirus software obviously gives no benefit to that user. This problem has worsened since 1997, since many more non-malicious programs designs came to modify other .exe files without regard to these false positive issues. In recent years, however, sophisticated behavior analysis has emerged which analyzes process and calls to the kernel in context before making a decision, which gives it a lower false positive rate than rules based on behavior monitoring. And the last one is heuristics. Some of more sophisticated antivirus softwares uses heuristic based approach to identify new malwares. So in this way, here two methods are used: file analysis and file emulation. As described above or in previous lecture, file analysis is the process by which antivirus software will analyze the instructions of a program. Based on the instructions, the software can determine whether or not the program is malicious. For example, if the file contains instructions to delete important system files, the file might be flagged as a virus. While this method is useful for identifying new viruses and variants, it can trigger many false alarms. The second heuristic approach is file emulation. By this, the target file is run in a virtual machine environment separate from the real system environment. The antivirus software would then log what actions the file takes in the virtual environment. If the actions are found to be damaging, the file will be marked as a virus. But again, this method can also trigger false alarms because it solely depends upon the antivirus developer how to decide whether it is a virus or not. So these are the methods in which antivirus detection techniques work. And a virus removal tool, what generally antivirus consists of a virus removal tool, which is a software for removing specific viruses from infected computers. Unlike complete antivirus scanners, they are usually not intended to detect and remove an extensive list of viruses. Rather, they are designed to remove specific viruses usually which are more effective than normal antivirus softwares. So in the next lesson, we will see, we'll see in this lecture only. So these are the types of famous antivirus companies since the beginning of Kaspersky Virus, Avast Antivirus, Trend Micro Antivirus, and McAfee Antivirus. To be honest with you, there are dozens of companies available in the market who are currently selling the antivirus products, but I would suggest that do not fall into prey of free antivirus softwares, as there are no such software which totally prevent your system. It is always better to pay to get your data saved securely, because once your data is lost, it is very difficult to get your data back. So I would always suggest you to pay for some softwares, and there is no such thing that this is which is the best software. Every company, every software has its own distinctive features. So I recommend you to look properly before buying any software, but do not fall prey to the free softwares that are available over the internet, as these files can itself be a virus. So stay alert and look, now we have understood what is antivirus software. You can surely look into detail. So welcome back to the last lecture of our sections, in which we will discuss what is firewall and what are the differences between firewall and antivirus. So as you can see, firewall is implemented in both hardware as well as software, whereas antivirus is just a software, so it is implemented in software devices only. Firewall deals with external threats, since it filters out the packets which are coming into the network, whereas antivirus deals with both external threats as well as internal threats. Then firewall counter attacks are possible. For example, attack which is being filed by firewall, which is a possible attack, and firewall works on monitoring and filtering, since it filter packets and discards the packets which are not good, whereas antivirus works on scanning of the infected files and the software. It doesn't filter the files, but it scans the files and then performs the 3 steps of quarantining, repairing, and deleting. Firewall checks the threat from incoming packets, but it does not, once the packet is entered or passed through the firewall, it doesn't care about that, because it is checking at the entry point itself, whereas antivirus checks threat from malicious softwares, spam, emails. These are the basic differences between a firewall and antivirus software. So if anyone now asks you what is meant by a firewall and what is meant by an antivirus, you can easily tell them, since now you know the basic differences between these two things. A big heartiest congratulations. Finally, you have successfully completed the fundamentals of cybersecurity, and me and my colleague Yash are very happy that you have reached till this point of the course. So I hope you really have learned cybersecurity, and we are going to launch our second course in a quick short time. Till now, you can revise the concepts, share this certificate on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook, show it to your friends, recommend this course to your friends, and also tell them why did you take this course and what was the outcome. So you can always go through the recommended books that we have attached. You can always go through the links. Then please drop a rating for this course. I mean, I guess it's the third or fourth time I'm telling, but it will be really helpful if you drop a rating. It just takes 2 or 3 seconds to leave a rating. And I would like to request, if you really want the second course free, please leave a review. I mean, it's a deal. If you want our second course free, please leave a rating. Okay, so, joking aside, it was a great journey teaching you guys, and I hope you liked our course. If you have any grievances, if you have any suggestions, or if you want to compliment us, you can write a review in the Udemy section, or just send an email, or we have attached Google Forms where you can fill your suggestions. So all the very best for the next journey, and stay tuned for our next part of the cybersecurity specialization. Meanwhile, do not forget to revise the concepts, keep watching the videos if you can forget, and make sure you have attempted all the quizzes. All the very best for you.